bringing you a reasoned approach to health and fitness. This is the Phi Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Phi Life Podcast. I'm John Barban. With me is Brad Pilon, and Brad's got a topic, so you might as well fire away here.
All right, so we're doing another episode of things I think but cannot prove. So just things I've come across, and I was thinking, you know what, this is probably a valid conversation to have, but I don't have any evidence to support what I'm about to say. So always fun. Okay, so right now with the big push for menopausal women, et cetera, to get stronger, to lift heavy is what all the articles are talking about. And there's definitely merit. That's a population that in general could do to get stronger. So it made me think of our old days in powerlifting, right? So for those of you who don't know, John and I definitely went through a powerlifting phase where, you know, we were just trying to be some of the big people. So I was 216, Johnny 240.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, we were trying not to be little peoples. We were just, the only thing that mattered was bench, squat, dead, and getting those numbers up. During that time, I did what's called conjugate training, which is a derivative of West Side Barbell's training technique, which is a bunch of stuff that not everyone's going to understand. But it basically revolved around every major lift was done twice a week. And one day was what they call sort of max effort day, where you just tried to work up to the heaviest weight possible. Then a couple of days later, you would do a dynamic effort day, where with about 50% of that weight, you would do multiple sets, 8 or 9 sets of a very low rep range, 2 to 3 reps, but you'd move the weight as quickly as possible. You'd be trying to learn to be explosive. In your mind, you would imagine that being a very heavy weight, and you would train your body to try to explode with that weight. That was a big part of the whole conjugate training system. You would do those 2 types of lifts, and everything else would just be what they would call repeated effort, which just means the standard way we all train with sets and reps. Now, you and I stopped powerlifting probably in our early 30s, right? Because we didn't want to fall apart, and it just wasn't an interest. We got into Adonis and training for shape, etc. But with the renewed interest in people in getting stronger, it made me want to revisit what we knew about powerlifting at the time and what I would change now. And this is what I think but cannot prove, is based on conversations we've had with Stu Phillips out of MAC. And Stu's team were the ones who originally showed that with 22 reps per set, you could sort of build as much muscle as lower reps per set. That their argument was it was just a fatigue state. The argument back to Stu at the time was like, yeah, but you know, you don't get strong like with heavy weights the same. And then Stu argued back to that strength at heavy weights is practice. So what he did was, I don't know if he published this, but his group did this, or at least he said this, was the group that was doing the high rep work then was allowed every once in a while to just play and practice with a heavier weight. And when you did that, they were able to lift a heavy weight to a similar effect of people who were just lifting heavy weights all the time. So my argument from a longevity, from a prevention of injury point of view for people who aren't elite powerlifters, is that max effort day is unnecessary. And that your actual best practice would be repeated effort, or just, you know, your normal 3 or 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps. And then a couple days later, that dynamic effort where you do a lower weight, much lower weight, but try to move it quickly. That would probably lead to the best improvements with less risk of injury. And then if you were competitive to peak for a show, you would then implement 8-12 weeks of heavy lifting to get ready for that show. So kind of like how we know that bodybuilders, you know, the way they train all year long is very different from the way they get ready for a show, or the way an athlete, a movie star gets ready for a movie is different than how they train all year round. That in chasing strength or getting better at certain lifts, you don't have to lift ultra heavy all year round, but instead you do everything auxiliary to that or adjacent to that. And then if you ever had a contest or want to see how much you could lift, which I don't know why you would if it's not a contest, you would take a block of time and train for that. So what I think but cannot prove is that the repetitive efforts of just working out combined with that dynamic effort of moving things quickly, that combination is probably just as effective as also doing heavy maximal effort every week. That's
that's
poised
interesting.
to you. Yeah.
I think some of people's getting caught up lifting heavy is a side effect of being taught by trainers who, in their experience, quickly went down the progress just means lifting heavier, because
you can measure it.
Because you're right, exactly. Because you can measure it. Because muscle gaining, how do you measure that if you aren't using a DEXA scan, which most people are never using?
Yep.
What do you go, body weight? And if you're training a woman, they're like hell, they're going to be like, oh, I'm gaining weight, I am improving. That is not on the table for a result. So that's right out the window. Guys like the idea of gaining muscle and using the scale as the proxy for that. Well, that must mean I've gained muscle. So most people aren't going to do a DEXA scan anyways, which is, if you care at all about body composition, that's exactly what you should do. So then you're down to, the madness of going to the gym and not knowing if it's getting you anywhere. You got to measure something. So the simplest thing to measure is strength. And if it isn't just going to be strength at a particular rep range, well, then what is it? It's the simplest way, like the least complicated way, is to just total maximum strength. How much can you lift? How much can you bench, right? But that's wrong for 99.9% of people. You should never be chasing maximum strength for any reason, because to Brad's point, that just quickly becomes the risk of injury so high, especially as you age, it just gets worse and worse. It's just not a smart way to train. And to what Brad's pointing out here, it can go up anyways without even training for maximum strength.
Exactly.
But that's also not obvious. And I think most trainers don't know that, or wouldn't think of training that way. Yeah. And in their experience, probably didn't do that. Yeah. But they did get, like for you and me, we did it the old way. You just more weight on the bar, hammer away, more weight on the bar. We probably wouldn't have had the patience or the trust but can I actually increase in maximum strength kind of without actually ever training for maximum strength, but then just testing it once in a while? Yeah. Most people wouldn't even think of that. No. So I think it's partly to do, I think what you're describing here is partly to do with just most people don't know how else to do it.
And I find it funny because the West Side guys, and this was a powerlifting club that was really popular like in the underground sort of bodybuilding scene, I guess late 90s. Mm-hmm. And the guys at Elite Fitness Systems, so like Dave Tate and Jim Windler, like those guys at early 2000s, people would read their stuff and quickly try it. And they just always sort of poo-poo and throw out the dynamic effort part or the moving the bar quickly part. But a lot of those guys stuck with it. And I'm just like, that's a group that's very, I mean, when you're an elite world-class powerlifter, you're very methodical about what you do. That group is like a hyper-focused, very analytical crew of people. So I always thought, there's probably a reason why they use it. But to your point, the problem with dynamic effort or trying to move a bar quickly, again, it's very hard to measure. Dr. Brian and I once did a bench workout where we actually attached an accelerometer to the bench press. It doesn't accelerate. It goes from here and then starts slowing down. So it's very hard to measure, am I going faster? It's just a mental effort thing. But then the argument is, this is what you're actually training with the dynamic. You're learning to go fast. You're imagining it as a heavy weight and pushing it quickly, and that translates. So if you can get away with a powerlifting style approach of repetitive effort and dynamic effort training, well, what a great way to train not only the older population who's just getting into weight training, who want to get stronger, but you don't want to risk that heavy maximal lifting. Young athletes who want to get stronger, but you're like, I can't have you max out on squats and you have a football game on Saturday, right? So it opens up a whole world of just, is the maximal effort under a bar a way to train, or is it the test, right? And then if you're doing it a lot, are you just training for the test? You're just getting used to, you get better at lifting heavy just by not panicking under 300 pounds of weight, right? So can you remove that part and still get great gains and then just train for the test or study for the test right before the test as opposed to all year round, if that makes sense?
Yeah, you said it the best way. Is it just the test or is it a way to train? So for only for competitors, it's both.
Yeah, if you're a power lifter, that's your sport.
And Olympic lifters.
Good
right?
point. Yeah.
Right. Power lifters, you know, is bench press, squat, deadlift. Olympic lifters is the clean and jerk and the snatch. And obviously you have to, you train in those rep ranges because that's the competition. And there's something to be said for movement specific strength.
Familiarity with weight too.
Familiarity. Oh, that's a tough word, with weight.
Familiarity.
Like you can't train at sub maximal numbers and then go to a powerlifting meet and expect to just max out without ever even feeling what it's like to be under that amount of weight. So, but again, I think this is all a crossover and some kind of misplaced teaching from many strength coaches who have been down that road themselves. I mean, we did it.
Yep.
Right. And every strength coach I know has done this. They've explored. I think it's part of the evolution of a strength coach that it's almost they have to go through it.
You want to make it scientific, so you want to measure something. It's the easiest one to measure, unless you're helping someone gain weight. Then it's even easier, right? But
but I mean the experience of a strength coach almost is by necessity. They have gone through all the phases.
100%. Yeah.
Right. So
totally
like
agree.
we did bodybuilding, and like I never got on the stage. You actually did a show, but we've done photo shoots where we get into the bodybuilding condition and enough to put up a non-embarrassing picture, right? Yes. So you've actually been in a competition, a little local thing, and I've put up enough pictures to show like I can get into shape, so buy my product type thing, right?
Yeah.
But then we've trained with powerlifting teams to see, okay, well, how strong can I get? How, like, does that act? Can we actually make that happen? So can we force our bodies into strength? So we've both done that. I never competed, but I trained with a powerlifting team to the point where I got strong enough that I could confidently say, oh, I know how that works. I know how to build strength. So I'm confident I can teach someone how to build strength.
Yeah.
Then I got into the Olympic lifts, and I got to the point where I could do a semi-reasonable clean and jerk.
Yeah.
And man, I could snatch so freaking hard to do. To me, that's the toughest thing in all of exercises, to do a proper snatch. But at least I got to the point where I knew the mechanics. I never felt confident enough to teach it to somebody. And nobody does those things.
Yeah, no.
But at least it was in my like experience catalog. I'm like, okay, I know what that feels like. And I know enough to tell an athlete, you're not doing that. Like that is not for you. Right.
Yeah.
And then I think what you're describing here is almost every strength coach has gone down all these roads to build their own knowledge base, to see like, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? If I'm going to teach somebody this, I better know how to do it. And the final piece there is like, well, the simplest measurement is just the number on the bar, but that's not practical for most people you're ever going to train yourself.
Yeah. Unless your client is like, I want to compete in a powerlifting contest, right? Or Olympic lifting. That number is something you can measure, but it's most likely very adjacent to what they're trying to do, right? So even when people are coming in their 40s and 50s, people like I've read and I know I need to lift heavy and get stronger. It's like, stronger's, both those things are very subjective, right? Like, so you probably need to be stronger, and yes, you probably need to be lifting heavier than you are, but that doesn't mean maximal lifting. And the hard part there is, as a trainer, especially less experienced trainers, is understanding that for a 50-year-old man or woman who's never lifted, the bar could be a maximal lift. Like, you gotta be really careful, right? Because they're going to say that you're going to get them under a bench press or a squat, and all of a sudden be like, oh geez, you're done, like you're down. And so it's realizing that those numbers are very relative. So you can't just all of a sudden get them into it's very easy if they're a 300, 400 pound lifter to, play with the numbers they're able to do to get them to a 305, 310 pound lifter. There's very easy measurements. You got a lot of wiggle room. When they're just struggling with the bar, your job is to get them functionally stronger really quickly, but you don't have as much wiggle room, right? Like, you just need lighter bars,
because even for really, really strong power lifters, an improvement from one year to the next could be 10 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. And they'd be happy with that. Yeah.
Right. And we're talking where you're in the 500, 600, 700 pound total number thing that they're hit on, whatever the lift is.
Yeah.
So where are you going with somebody who's a beginner? Like, what is it, ounces? Are we changing in ounces? All you're doing there with a beginner or someone who doesn't have that kind of strength, it's nothing to do with measuring poundages. It's like, can they execute the exercise correctly and get the response they want without causing an injury?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
practice.
How do we wrap this one up?
So I
I
can't
don't
prove
know.
it.
This is your thought. How do we wrap this up?
Can't prove it. But the thought is that perhaps training for strength, training to get stronger, doesn't always have to be maximal loads. So you can just get stronger through practice. But I would add in that if you're bored with your routine or want to try something new, that dynamic effort that powerlifters use may be valuable for non-powerlifters because it is lightweight, so it becomes more available to more people. The goal is one of just moving a bar quickly with good form, which is something not a lot of people practice. So it's a new and novel, what do you call it? Stimulus, right? And it's something that for a lot of people who want to train a muscle group, let's say twice a week, it's a way to get that done with a novel stimulus that maybe won't make you as sore as just doing repetitive exercises, 3 sets of 10 on Monday and 3 sets of 10 again on Thursday. It's something new, and perhaps that prevents injury. So I would say, as something to take away from this is, you don't always have to lift heavy to get stronger, but perhaps lifting faster is something you want to try out.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Yep.
There we go. All right.
So hopefully that makes sense, that talk through that. And I don't know if I have really much to add to that. It's just after your 20s, really your injury prevention should be like above all of those other performance metrics.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't mean you can't chase performance around.
Keep you entertained.
It's literally it can't be performance first with adding in the risk of injury. This just doesn't make any sense.
No, you gotta be willing to sacrifice injury for performance if that's your goal.
So let's just save the bigger weights for once in a while to test, but it's not necessarily anything you should be training. All right.
Exactly.
It's a good place to leave it. All right, so for Brad Pilon, I'm John Barban, and that's your Phi Life Podcast. Oh, and the other thing I want to say is if you're still here and you like what we got going on, we'd appreciate it if you maybe subscribe, give us a like, or even share this with somebody who likes it. We know the channel's kind of small, but we definitely appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll catch you later.